share with us how you got into IT?
Yeah, no, for sure. So just a little background about me and kind of how I entered into the IT field. I guess as a teenager in high school, I was an athlete. So really, I wasn't even really concerned about school or anything. I just enjoyed playing football and basketball. It wasn't until I had a neck injury in football that I actually woke up and said, wow, I really need to figure this thing out. What am I going to do from a career perspective? Because I really like nice things, and I thought I was going to either the NBA or the NFL. So I guess it was my senior year trying to figure things out, and saw a commercial on ECPI. Ended up going to ECPI. Long story short, got my computer technician degree. And actually, I started my career out working on elevators. So that's kind of how I made my first technical job, was wiring up the housings of elevators early on in my career. But I figured out real quickly that's not what I wanted to do. So I ended up landing a PC tech job. Started doing that for a while. Went back to school and got my undergrad. But I started off supporting laptops and desktops. Through that process, I moved up to, kind of the natural progression. I never really did help desk, but I went from desktop to, supporting servers locally, and then became basically one of the global engineers for our infrastructure. So travel a lot all over the world, from anywhere from Sao Paulo, Brazil, did a lot of trips to Europe, Switzerland, Germany, Paris, a number of places overseas, and just supporting our global infrastructure. I work for a global company in 90 different countries and probably 35,000 employees worldwide. And I supported the global infrastructure, the backbone of our infrastructure. So that was one of my key roles at that time. So that's really how I started. After that, I progressed more into developing tools to support our infrastructure, meaning our support teams. I developed tools, so I started using ASP.NET. At the time, I was going back to school to get my computer science degree. So I really started developing tools for our team. End up actually landing a tool that is now a commercial product for a company called 1E. I used to support SMS or SCCM, currently by Microsoft, which is a software packaging tool. 1E now holds that product. It's basically a tool that allows you to go to a website and shop for software to install on your PC. So that's kind of my early part of my career. And then as I started to develop software and things of that nature, I moved more on the application side, and then moved into management, project management, so on and so forth. So
there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, it's a lot more. So we definitely can get into some more of that here in a bit. I thought I would stop, and maybe if you had any other questions, I can pick up from there.
Oh, well, yeah, I was wondering, so you said you had to manage large teams, and, you also coming from an IT background. So, what was it like making that transition from doing some of the technical work to doing the management side of it?
It was very difficult for me, Brian. I'm a very, in my earlier years, I was a very technical person. And, when you're very technical, when you're very detailed, it's hard sometimes to release the reins to someone else. So I fought for that for a number of years, just trying to move from doing to managing. And it was a difficult process. But how I actually started to manage that process was actually through building processes. So I started working in more of a service management role, meaning I started working with vendors to actually start outsourcing, helping my team outsource different components of our support model. Through that process, I felt a lot better because there was a predictable output for the services that would be delivered. So through that process, I was able to release that, was it me doing it? Was it me delivering the work? Was I okay with going to sleep that it was done the right way? So you know, one of my key roles was starting to develop standard procedures, SOPs, that my team would follow and our vendors would follow to support our infrastructure. You know, at the end of the day, what we were trying to do is shrink the footprint or cost from a supportability standpoint. So we had to start to standardize things.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, if you lay out the guidelines and you can trust that the people are following the guidelines, then, you know, that makes sense that the work will get done right. So I guess you create a template and you're able to use the same template in various different fields, or do you have to tinker it with it a whole lot as you move from different industries?
Well, so I done that many years ago, but I put that back to practice recently when I was working in municipal government. And what I found out quickly in municipal government was, you know, my resources were challenged with the proper training, experience, and then they were probably as well as they had more work than they could deliver, right? So we had a small team, we had to deliver a lot of work. So what I quickly, you know, reached back to was my training from back then, creating standard processes. And one of the things that I wanted to do, I had a couple of goals. One goal was I wanted to grow my senior analysts, right? I wanted to grow them more into an architectural view of their application, meaning being able to really design and architect their applications. So what I done was, by having them start to create standard procedures and actually start to work more with the vendor as opposed to me working with the vendor, they begin to grow and stretch because that's something they weren't familiar with. But by them creating the standard procedures, they also work with the junior technicians to actually start managing the day-to-day operations. So I started to not only help to grow them from a technical perspective, but from a managerial leadership standpoint of coaching and mentoring the junior resources on our team. So it's kind of a win-win situation across the board. So that training that I had many years ago, I used it to help develop my team when I worked for within the public sector. And we were able to do a lot more and be more efficient in delivering the services, more predictable services.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like it would make it a little bit more fluid. You know, you get your team members to see more of the process from the beginning to the end, and then that, you know, definitely helps to increase their knowledge base, especially when you have to teach somebody else.
Yeah, because they were in a, you know, one of the vicious cycles that they were in is their support model was they had a primary and secondary. Well, the secondary person never supported the application, so to speak. So if the primary person was out, really, when they were the main person, they didn't know anything about the application. So this process helped that a lot, because now that secondary person is the day-to-day operational person, and the senior person was more from a strategic design and documentation standpoint because they knew the application. So that enabled that secondary person to grow and learn how to support that application, so my senior person could actually take vacation and not have to worry about getting calls.
It sounds like the people that work with you will definitely have good things to say about you. You know, you help them
I hope.
grow,
Let's hope. Yeah.
Made their life easier. Made your life easier.
I would say so. Yep.
So I'm sure the people would like to know. You know, you've been across a few different industries. You know, and I guess that also entails a few different positions. What are the routes that you took to get to these? To transition throughout your career? And also, could you, share with us, what does some of this stuff mean, like government administration industry and IT strategy? Can you quantify some of that for us?
Yeah, so I guess if I start to look at the progression within, the IT field, one of the key things as you start to progress in your career, and I talk to this, we'll talk a little bit about our apprentice a bit, the No One community, but one of the things that's very important and that's the value to an organization is you understanding the business. and I'll speak about that in several different roles. If you're supporting the help desk, right? If you're at the help desk and you're taking calls day in and day out, you have to start to understand your customers who are calling and what area they're calling from to be able to route them in the proper direction for support quickly, right? Because at the end of the day, if a user is calling and they need support, right, the one thing that you want is to be able to issue support to them seamlessly and them not have to call back over and over. So in a help desk role, you're learning the business. Although you're more of a level 1 support, you're not really probably fixing the issue. You got to know how to ask the right questions. So that'll be a common theme that I'll start to talk about is how do you ask the right questions? So it's understanding this is the marketing department. What questions do I need to ask them? So, you create these help desk scripts. So you have the senior people create help desk scripts. As you move to desktop support and you're setting with your users, there's a triage process that you're also, when you come to someone's desk, understanding, who they are, what role and position they're in. How do I start to triage their local PC? So for me, every seat that I sat in, I always looked at it as how am I adding value to the customer that's in front of me or the customer that I know I'm supporting. So when I went to supporting infrastructure at the server level, although I wasn't in front of the customer, my customer was more so my support team, meaning I needed to build a process for my support team that was seamless where they could actually administer the service to their customer in a seamless way to where their customer looked at them as very efficient. So being able to write proper documentation, sometimes, you think you're just doing things technical, but once you move into a more senior role, you need to be able to create documentation that your team can follow. Once I got out from behind of a technical role and started doing more business-facing roles, project management, now I was face-to-face with the customer, and my goal then was to understand what resources did I need to deliver to our business users. So I needed to understand what the business done and how could technology help the business, right? Because a solution is not always in the technology. Sometimes it's actually changing the processes that the business is using. And that's a tough conversation, right? The business always think their processes are right. But for me, I had to actually go in and unpack the details of their processes and what technology we had to deliver them a seamless solution. So going back to your original question, it seemed like every time I changed seats, I always looked at what did I need to do to make sure I had a satisfied customer. If you can do that in a technical role, your progression, right, will be a lot more seamless as you go throughout your technical career.